to all the moms, and as I said earlier, to the aunts and maternal role models offering assistance and guidance and unconditional love. We honor you today. And blessing to all amazing women today, everywhere. Your presence, your caring, your nurturing is a blessing to humanity. And so I have a reading that I found from Paramahansa Yogananda to honor us on this Mother's Day. And he says, a mother's love is not given to us to spoil us with indulgence, but to soften our hearts, that we may in turn soften others with kindness. In India, we speak of God as Mother Divine. Every mother is a manifestation of God's unconditional love. Although human mothers can be imperfect, the Divine Mother is perfect. Mothers were created by God to show us that we are loved with or without cause. May all the sons and daughters of the world be filled with motherly affection, which is the reflection of the Divine Mother's unconditional love, that we may give that unconditional motherly love to one another, so that we have peace and heaven on earth. And so I know it is that Divine Mother that fills us all with unconditional love this Mother's Day and always. So, let's just take a breath. And my talk title today is A Balance of Power. And so as we acknowledge Mother's Day, we acknowledge the feminine qualities of creation, of intuition, of nurturing. But even though those qualities are powerful, they are powerless without the masculine qualities of intelligence, action, and assertion, right? We need both the feminine and the masculine together. And so how do we find that balance? We are in a new awakening in the world. We are in a very exciting time in history. We have an opportunity to see our culture and traditions of the world in a brand new way. As we maneuver through this amazing time, we're seeing with new eyes, with new awareness. And so this pandemic, the past year, you've heard me say before, has sent us to our rooms. We've been sent to our rooms by the universe to pay attention to our behavior and what we've done, to the planet, to our relationships, and to the seemingly need for greed and power, and the disregard for disrespect for others, as well as our own selves. So all of this has happened and we've fallen out of balance. And so Mother Nature let us know that there is no control, that we're not in control, and she has the power. So basically Mother Nature set us in our place. And we find that it's all about power, but it's not the outer power, it's inner power. It's establishing a relationship with ourself, with the soul. Carolyn May says, interior power is the province of the self, power that is unseen, mystical, and of no practical street currency. Yet we are all born with an uncanny sense that it is our interior self that is most valuable, our most powerful treasure. How well we refine this inner power determines whether the external crises in our lives will make or break us, as the saying goes. I love that part of her quote where she says, the interior power is the province of the self. It has no practical street currency, but it is the most powerful thing we have is the awareness of self and the power of self. So how we refine and develop that inner power going forward is going to determine how we are going to react and respond in crises, not only in our own lives individually, but collectively, like what we've been through with the pandemic. So what is at stake here is not only for our physical wellness, but to have mastery over our holistic self, our spirit, mind, body, and emotions. It's so important to find that awareness and that balance with all the aspects of ourselves. And it's so important to recognize the energetic self as well. Author Shayna Hiller says, when we fail to acknowledge our vast energetic system, we may feel chronically out of balance. Besides working on our physical health through conscious eating and fitness, it's equally important to pay attention to our subtle energies if we desire to live a healthy life. Have you noticed that in your life? Do you pay attention to the energy around you? Do you notice when you're in unsettled or toxic energy with someone that has a lot of negativity? So holistic means the whole self. It's important for us as we care for our soul to include all the parts of ourselves: spirit, mind, body, and emotions, the holistic realm of our being. And so regardless of gender, each of us contains both the masculine and feminine energy. And so when we talk about these energies, people have a tendency to identify them as either male or female, when in fact we have both of these. Female has male tendencies and male has female tendencies. There's a balance, or hopefully we will come to a balance of them in both of us. The masculine qualities are logic, planning, structure, discipline, and control. And the masculine energies support the growth of the balanced ego, financial stability, family, shelter, organization. Those are the masculine qualities that are part of each of us. What happens is an overabundance of masculine energy manifests as tight muscles, digestive trouble, holding grudges, and unreasonable anger. And so the feminine part of ourselves is more subtle because our society is so highly ego-driven. And the feminine qualities are governed by intuition, receptivity, dreams, and emotion. This is a necessary counterbalance to the masculine. It's an important part for us, and it's important to have that. And so if you want, you can visualize the feminine part is fluid, is liquid. It flows. It must be contained, otherwise it's dispersed. And dispersed feminine energy feels like being out of control, ungrounded, irritable, and lonely. And so when we operate primarily from our masculine side, we may feel tired or stressed, overworked, and unloved as a result. And when we feel overworked and we're moving about life on autopilot, we're too much in our heads and not enough in our bodies. Or we experience lack of intimacy in our lives. And it's when we refuel the feminine that brings us back into order. Author Joan Boroshenko says, women are intrinsically mystical, experiencing a direct connection with the divine. For women, there really is no journey, this spiritual journey. What she says is life and spirituality are one and the same, because the women experience things like infertility, stillbirth, menopause. These are women mysteries and passages that are related to our spiritual lives. And we need to find meaningful ritual to celebrate and find strength and to mourn those. So over the years, the spiritual exercises and systems were developed by men. And because the masculine journey, and this is what it's meant to be, is to ascend the ladder of psychological development. And so these practices that have been developed by men for women haven't always worked, because the feminine is a journey of deepening the relationship with the divine. And so for years, we've had role models to access achievement. Tony Robbins type of do this and achieve results. You can do this. I remember going to a Tony Robbins introductory seminar, and the energy there is so intense and loud and masculine, and let's do this. And it's energizing, and you want to grab onto that. You want to participate in that. But as a woman, I felt out of sorts. That energy didn't work for me, but I couldn't figure out why. For years, I didn't understand this. It wasn't until I started studying the teachings of Carolyn Myss and Brene Brown, Louise Hay, Tara Brach, because what they did was they brought us more balance. They showed us the softer side, the feminine side, and how to tap into the eternal, in the internal, how to tap into the internal, how to tap into our emotions, that it's okay to have an emotion. It's okay to have feelings and to bring them to the surface so we're able to see them and work with them. And so how this affects each of us individually, because until we find that balance, we're one-sided, either too soft or too hard, too not taking action or all taking action. And so these are ways that we can tap into the divine feminine. One is to think about cooperation rather than competition. We live in a world of competition, right? Who's the best? I have to get ahead. How does my life look like compared over here? But when we find cooperation, we find that connection and that balance. Another way is to feel with our senses, rather to be always analytical and thinking. Another way of connecting with the divine feminine is to create rather than deconstruct. We're always ready to let go of old ways that aren't working. But instead, what if we looked at how can we recreate this to work in a new way? That's using the divine feminine. To complement rather than criticize. And we all have that one, regardless of where we're at. A lot of it is we have on ourselves. We have our own self-criticism. But how do we find that where we can compliment rather than criticize? Acknowledge ourselves rather than find fault with ourselves, right? Or am I the only one that does that? I think there's other people that do that. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Author and teacher Ruth Miller says, uniting our masculine and feminine natures, acknowledging our inner power for healing and transformation is potentially as great as our capacity to manipulate outer form. And it may well be the defining discovery of this new millennium. So what she's saying is uniting the two, bringing the two together and acknowledging the inner power of healing and transformation, as well as the capacity to change things, to manipulate and move and create in the outer, that is going to be the defining discovery. That is going to be what moves us forward in a culture that wants to move so quickly all the time in a hurry. But bringing those two together, we pause, we connect, and we see a greater whole. When our culture, our society is in balance, we can accept both the material and spiritual aspects of our being, both the active and the receptive modes of being that are both orderly and can be orderly and chaotic processes at the same time. In fact, quantum physics talks about the chaos theory, that there's chaos, but that chaos is necessary because the chaos has to work itself out in order to come to the order. And so what if we acknowledge that and recognize that? It would make such a difference in our world, not only individually, but collectively in our society. And so it can be difficult to move forward if we're not appreciating ourselves. And so it's a great, I think, thing to talk about on Mother's Day. We're appreciating our mothers. But I think the thing our mothers want most of all is for us to appreciate ourselves, is to have that acknowledgement and appreciation for ourselves. When we do that, we've acknowledged them. Thank you, Mom. You did a great job. What I saw this meme today on Facebook. I wish I wrote it down or copied it. It was something about thank you for all the work that you did, Mom. I'm awesome. What if we thought of ourselves that way? That who we are is awesome in the eyes of God. We are awesome. And sometimes we forget our own goodness. When we're stressed, we get defensive. We become insecure. We get caught in that place of self-importance. And life becomes self-important. And when we're stressed and caught in that, we don't like ourselves. And I remember there was a time in my life where I went through that. I didn't like who I was. And what I did unconsciously was I started eating less and less. And I didn't notice any change, but my family and friends did. And they brought it to my attention. They saw the change. And when I went in and talked to a counselor, she started asking me questions. And I felt that I wasn't enough. And that I was in a relationship and I felt I needed to diminish myself so that the relationship could thrive. And that's what happens in our minds when we don't see that for ourselves, when we don't acknowledge and appreciate ourselves. Fortunately, she was able to work with me and I was able to see that and bring back that acknowledgement. And so when we're caught in that self-judgment, self-criticism, it creates suffering in our lives. And author Tara Brach, calls that the trance of unworthiness. Such a great name. Trance of unworthiness. And we have that when we have that feeling that we're flawed, that we're chronic, when it's that chronic feeling of I'm not okay. We feel that we're not quite the way we want to be, right? We're not quite enough. This trance is unseen, but it rules our lives. So what's important is for us to pay attention, to take note of this, that when I feel I'm flawed, I have no control over my life. I feel like I'm not okay. A friend sat with her dying mother, and her mother had been in a coma for many hours. And this friend just sat with her watching and waiting. And her mother came out of the coma, and suddenly, all of a sudden, she sat up and she looked directly at her and she said, "You know, all of my life, I thought something was wrong with me." And then that was it. She laid back down and she closed her eyes, and that was it. She went back into her coma and passed soon after that. And this friend said it was the greatest gift she could have received, because she became aware of how deep and insidious, how we are at war with ourselves. That on her dying bed, her last thought was, "I always thought something was wrong with me." And how many of us think that? We live in a world where we think, what's wrong with me? In fact, Oprah has a new book out, and she said, we've been asking the wrong question. We've been asking the question, what's wrong with you? Or what's wrong with me? When the right question is, what happened to you? Because there's something that happened a long time ago that we made a decision we're not okay. And that's the thing that's ruling us. So when we can identify that, we bring more peace to ourselves. That we can find that peace, that comfort, that clarity within ourselves. Tara Brach goes on to say that we have this sense of homesickness. We feel dis-ease when we're not at home, at peace within ourselves, within our bodies. It's a really important thing to notice, is to pay attention to how am I feeling in this moment, to sit and notice, where is their pain, where is their tightness, where is their uncomfortableness. When we feel it in the body, we can be at home with ourselves. So the trance of unworthiness can disconnect us from our aliveness. And you know, children have an aura of aliveness, don't they? They just know the sense of themselves. They know their aliveness, their awareness of themselves. And there's a story about a Waldorf school, and children were in an art class. And there were 4 children at a table, and this little girl was really into her drawing. And the teacher walked by and noticed, and she asked her, "What are you drawing?" And the little girl said, "Oh, I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher chuckled, and she said, "Oh, honey, nobody knows what God looks like." And without missing a beat, without looking up, the little girl just kept drawing and said, Oh, when I'm finished, they will. It's that sense where we have that confidence in our being, when we have that awareness of who we are. Wouldn't that be amazing to have that? But instead, society reinforces the trance of unworthiness because it tells us we have to look a certain way to earn a certain income, have a certain personality. So our practice, our spiritual practice, is to notice when we have that inner chatter of I'm not enough, that I'm not okay, compared to this person, I'm not okay, compared to that person, I'm not enough. We have to notice that. And then we can pause and say, what am I believing right now? And she says one of the exercises to do is before you go to sleep, look at your day and write down in your journal when you were in a trance. What were you saying? What were you thinking? That in order to heal it, we have to bring it into the light of awareness. And the key to having this balance of power, of coming out of the trance, of the balance of the masculine and feminine, the key to the power is mindfulness, being in the present moment. When we worry about the future, we're not in the moment. When we're worried and maybe resentful or pain from the past, we're not in the present moment. So our work is to be in the now, to be in the present. Thich Nhat Hanh says, breathe in and become aware that you are alive. You can touch the miracle of being alive. That is a kind of enlightenment. The secret to enlightenment is happiness right here and right now. Isn't that true? The secret to happiness is right here and right now. It's not about tomorrow. It's not about yesterday, but it's about right now. I invite you to take a breath. It's as simple as that. In that breath, take another breath. In that breath, I'm in the moment. I remember. I brings my awareness back into my body, into who I am. And so find those moments during the day to notice your breath. Practice being in the moment. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools that we have. Because when we meditate, we allow ourselves to be centered. We allow ourselves to go within. And a thought comes up, and we practice the discipline of seeing it and letting it go. Meditation is not stopping our thinking. I know a lot of people think that. It's not stopping our thinking. It's noticing our thinking. I have a thought, I pay attention, I let it go. And bringing it back to the breath. It's a discipline. It's a practice. It's mindfulness. Another thing to do is to actively appreciate yourself. Give thanks for your body, for your mind, for your awareness, for who you are, for your skills and talents. Send love to each other. Deepak Chopra says, hope is the engine of consciousness that leads us to enlightenment. Society has the belief that enlightenment is rare and difficult. The world's wisdom traditions take the opposite view. The process of becoming enlightened is to recognize yourself in the mirror. And so Chopra goes on to say, if you have a dusty mirror, it reflects your light dimly. But if you have a clean mirror, it reflects without dullness, blemishes, or distortions. So that's our practice, is to recognize ourselves as the awareness that we are, as the presence that we are, as the light that we are. The realization of the self is the essence of enlightenment. So what takes time and practice is the process of clearing away the dust from the mirror. And that's why we come together in community. That's why we come together in spiritual practice, is we're cleaning away the dust in the mirror to be that clear, clean self. So, our reminders: notice your true self in meditation. Remember to breathe. Take a breath. Remember to breathe. It's free. You can do it as often as you want, and it enlivens your whole beingness. Stretch out, send that love out, and feel compassion for others and the suffering of others. As we do that, we expand our awareness of the world. Accept yourself just the way you are. Pay attention to your thoughts, your beliefs, your ideas. And again, remember to breathe. That mindfulness not only brings us back to our centeredness, but it brings us back to the awareness of our feminine energy of receiving, our masculine energy of doing, and it brings them together so that we consciously, in love, are able to act and to be in the world. And so I close with this quote from Rumi: "You were born with potential. You were born with goodness and trust. You were born with ideals and dreams. You were born with greatness. You were born with wings. You are not meant for crawling, so don't. You have wings. Learn to use them and fly." So let's take this time into prayer. Oh, as I take a breath, I just bring my awareness into that infinite and divine and sacred life that is good, that is God. How grateful I am for this light, this life, this presence that moves in and through and as me and through all humanity. How grateful I am for the gifts that I receive each day, and I know that humanity receives, of wisdom and wholeness, of love and peace. I know for everyone that we receive them graciously. We take them into our hearts, into our minds. We breathe them in and we breathe them out into the universe with compassion and love. And that the balance of masculine and feminine is the order and balance in which we live. It is that receptive beingness of all life. So I'm so grateful for our time together. And I know that as we go forth in this light, in this love, in this peace, in this radiating presence of clarity and wisdom. We go forth in this divine presence of grace. And so I know that love lifts us and illuminates us, each of us individually and collectively, that we walk in that light and that love and that peace and grace this day. And all that we need is already revealed in the mind of God. And so I give grateful thanks for the blessing of this day, for this good, for this teaching, for this awareness and inspiration. And I release this word with deep gratitude and love. And together we proclaim,